Hey, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, and here we are. We are about to kick off my contractually obligated list of my top 100 favorite board games of all time. But before we do, I wanted to present this kind of supplemental list first. You see, as I was going through compiling my list of my favorite games of all time, I also at the same time started compiling a list of games that I hadn't played enough yet to feel worthy putting them onto my top 100 games of all time. And there were a lot of them. In fact, I stopped counting at 50. So, every time you make a top 100 list, any game that's not present on the list makes people wonder, oh, does he not like that game? Why does he hate this game so much? Well, since it turned out to be such a big list, I wanted to make a video first with my top 50 games that aren't on my top 100, but given half a chance, probably would earn their way onto it. So, I'm going to do this really quick. I'm not going to dwell on the games. I'm just doing this to give a demonstration of if you're looking for a certain game on my top 100 and wondering why it's not on there, this might answer that question. So, let's get started with number 50. The first game that's not on my top 100 games of all time list, but possibly could be if I ever got a chance to have it hit the table, is Warrior Knights. Why did this game intrigue me? Because it combines area control and diplomacy, and it's just really neat, and it's got lots of neat bits and pieces and components, but it's an older game. It's got a very thick rule book, and it's also been, I think, surpassed by some other more recent streamlined games that kind of give the same feel in recent years. So I still have it, I still want it to hit the table, but every time the option comes up, something else to play is always chosen instead. So, Warrior Knights is the first one. Number 2 on my list is War of the Ring. Now, this is a fantastic looking game that I've read the rules and set it up a little bit, and I got it specifically to play with my wife, but with work and life and child and everything that goes along, you know how it goes. You never have quite enough time to sit down and play a 4-hour epic battle game on the weekend like you always want to. So this one is still sitting in the box, waiting for that magic day that we can spend the afternoon playing it together. Until then, it sits on my list at number 2 of games that are waiting at the table. And number 3 is another game that I've talked about in a similar vein in another video, Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. I originally got this just for the components and the pieces and all of that good stuff. Oh yeah. But whereas War of the Ring is a 2-player game that's going to take all afternoon, Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition is a all afternoon or longer game that's going to take like 5-6 people. And trying to get that many people together to play this game has proven to be challenging at the least. So that's why it sits at number 3 on my list of games waiting to work their way onto my top 100. Next up is a game I actually don't have in my collection, but have had my eye on for a while, I think since last November, and that's the new version of Through the Ages. I'm a sucker for a good civilization-type building game, and this one seems to be a fantastic one. But haven't invested neither the time nor the money into it to get involved in it, but it is there on my radar. So that's the reason why you won't see Through the Ages on my top 100 list. Number 5 on my list is Spreadsheet the Game, also known as Terra Mystica. Now this is a game that I originally looked at with disdain. I'd see people playing it at my game group and I'd be like, oh, that game just looks like just too much maintenance while you play. But slowly but surely, this game has weaseled its way into my curiosity, and now I really want to play it. But I've waited so long that it doesn't hit the table at my local game clubs as often as possible, so I haven't had the chance yet. But hopefully soon, I'll be able to play a game of Terra Mystica, and we'll see if it earns its way onto my official top 100. Ooh. Number 6 is Stronghold from Stronghold Games. Stronghold 2nd Edition came out last year, and it really intrigues me. It's asymmetrical play of 2 people. One is trying to defend their stronghold, and the other one is bombarding it with different monsters and abilities. Looks fantastic, but it's just one of those that within the last year, a lot of other games have come along that I've been either waiting to play or been asked to play for other reasons. And so Stronghold is just still remaining in my queue of a game to get and then get to the table. but it looks really, really interesting. But it won't be on my top 100 list. Now at number 7, we have the game within the Panic series that intrigues me the most, and that's Star Trek Panic. Star Trek Panic looks more intriguing to me than Castle Panic and Dead Panic by far. You got the missions, you got the little Enterprise you can move around that takes damage. It just looks really, really a lot more intriguing to me than the others. But I never really warmed up to Dead Panic or Castle Panic as much. So when Star Trek Panic came along, it's like, oh yeah, that does look neat, but it wasn't on my radar to really invest the time to go and track down a copy of it and learn how to play. So it's out there, and my curiosity towards it is growing, but that's still the state that it's at. But ooh, it does look like the best out of the Panic series so far. Star Trek Panic. Number 8, you can thank Rodney Smith from Watch It Played for, and that is Space Hulk. He has a fantastic series on going over a game of Space Hulk, and as soon as I saw his playthrough of it, I immediately went out to go try and find a copy of it, and it was sold out. And then a couple months later, the 4th edition came out, and I scooped that guy right up, and it's now been scooped, but has not been laid out on the table to actually play yet. But Space Hulk looks fantastic and fun, and the components are just astounding, and that's why Space Hulk is the 8th game that you won't see on my top 100 list. Some of these games have been on my wish list for a while, and that's true with number 9, Shogun. I've had several opportunities to buy a copy of Shogun secondhand, and I just, every single time it has slipped through my fingers, and every single time it does, I regret it a little bit more and more. So the next time the chance to get a copy of Shogun comes along, I probably am going to sink my talons into it and grab that copy, and then hopefully get it to the table and see if it's worthy of hitting my top 100 list. But for now, it stays at number 9 on my wish list. Number 10 on my list is a game called Senji, which looks really interesting because it has a little bit of this negotiation and diplomacy aspect to area control and such. It looks really intriguing. I've actually taken it to my game club on several different occasions, and it's just always been outvoted for something else to be played instead by the group. So I'm hoping that eventually I can force my own will upon my group and get Senji to the table. But until then, it's waiting in the wings. Number 11 on my list is a game called Quarantine, which is about running a hospital. And I got this game to play with some close friends of mine. In fact, one of those friends works at a hospital. I thought, hey, isn't this a great little tie-in to your work at the hospital? And then they came over for game night one night, and I mentioned the game, and before I even proposed playing it, the words out of his mouth were like, oh, the last thing I want to do is play a game that replicates what I do at work. So I tucked Quarantine back onto my shelf, and it's never really seen the light of day since. So I never really got a chance to play it, but I was always curious about it, and so that's why Quarantine is still on my list of games to consider for my top 100. Now, I'm a sucker for games that use dice in ways other than rolling them. And number 12 on my list, Quantum, does that very thing with dice. It uses the different sides of the dice as different types of spaceships that are in your fleet, and you go around and attack and try to take planets and stuff from your opponents. I just haven't had a chance to have this one hit the table yet, but the fact that it uses the dice in this non-rolling mechanism really intrigues me, so we'll see if it eventually graduates from my wish list to my top 100 list. Alright, so I enjoy probably about 75% of the social deduction games that I come across. Number 13 on my list, though, hasn't hit the table yet, because every single time that I crack open the rulebook to Project Faust, there's something about it that causes me to just completely lose interest. I don't know if it's the way that the rulebook is written, or just the graphic design work, I don't know, but me and everyone else in my game group that has sat down and is like, let's play Project Faust, we've never actually gotten through the rules. Something happens and we end up playing something else. So eventually, hopefully, we will be able to retain our attention level long enough to get through the rulebook of it. I'm going to go do something else. All right, number 14 is Power Grid. Pure and simple, this game looks like a new modern classic, but every time I see someone else playing it at a local game day or game club, they're playing it for like 4 or 5 hours. So I admit it, that's kind of scared me off from playing it. I'm sure that that's not typical for a game of Power Grid, especially if you play with fewer players, but really, that's why Power Grid still sits on my wish list here. All right, number 15 on my list is Paris Connection. It's this neat game about kind of managing these resources and almost very lightly treating resources as stock in these train companies as you create these train tracks. Super interesting. I've seen someone else play my copy at my local game club, and I watched in envy as they did. But as every time I've tried to get it to the table, there's something about it. I don't know if it just seems too light for people, or if people see it almost as like a kids level game. I'm not sure, but I have never been able to get anyone to play this game with me. So that's why Paris Connection still sits on my list. Other people are playing it, just not me. All right, for number 16 on my list, Nexus Ops, I don't have a good reason or a good story for why it hasn't hit the table yet. I should be playing this game all the time. I should be playing this game right now, but it just has never materialized. So, and again, I don't have a good excuse for this one. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But number 16, Nexus Ops, I have no idea why it won't be on my top 100 yet. Just something wrong with me, I guess. Great, now I have that hanging out there. Number 17 is New Dawn, which is part of the Among the Stars universe, but it's kind of a different strategy type game set in that same universe. And admittedly, that's the reason that I made the decision to go out and get New Dawn, is because it was in that Among the Stars universe, and I wanted to see how it expanded. But I haven't yet. I've seen how it sits in a box on my shelf, which is embarrassing to admit, but I'm hoping to rectify that soon and see if New Dawn shines its way onto my top 100. But so far, New Dawn, no dice. Okay, the blame for number 18 on my list I place squarely on the Secret Cabal, because they went on and on and on and on about Mythotopia, and based on their descriptions and review of it, I'm really intrigued to play it, but when the time has come to play something a little more substantial, newer hotness, more flashy games have hit the table instead. So Mythotopia still remains a mythical fictional game as far as I'm concerned. So that's why it's still sitting on my wish list at number 18. I got it right, 18. Woo! Okay, number 19 is a game that I feel that as a gamer I should have played by now, and that's Mission Red Planet. I had a good excuse for a long time. It was out of print. But recently a new version of it came out, and I was fortunate enough to land a copy of that. And after it landed, it has not budged. So, number 19 on my list, Mission Red Planet. Still waiting to work its way onto my top 100 for consideration. So, I punched out all the components of Millennium Blades. I assembled all the little packs of money for Millennium Blades. I read through the instructions for Millennium Blades, and I got everything ready and was excited to play Millennium Blades, and I just have not had an opportunity to do so. I'm looking forward to playing Millennium Blades, but boy howdy, there's an awful lot of stuff in that game to set up, sort, and get ready to go. And I will admit that there may have been more than one time that I started to get it ready and ran out of time and had to move on to something else. So, Millennium Blades. Hopefully, it won't be 1,000 years before I get to it. But that's why it's on my wish list currently and not my top 100. Now, number 21 on my list is Merchants and Marauders, which looks really meaty and interesting. But to be honest, I obtained my copy of it fairly recently. And when the opportunity to play such a game has come up, we've opted for Star Wars Rebellion instead. So Star Wars Rebellion has kind of usurped Merchants and Marauders, but Merchants and Marauders is still on that list. And if and when its expansion ever comes back into print, I'm hoping that that will be the deciding factor that pushes it over the edge and gets it to the table. But that's why it still sits on number 21 on my wish list. The number 22 is a game that I don't even have in my collection, but I have drooled over, and that is Mega Civilization. This is what, a 8-9 day long game. It's just huge. This is a game where, you're going to need like 2 4x10 tables to lay this whole game out on and whatever. But it looks so cool to try at least once. But I have not yet got a chance to try it at least once, and that's why it's still sitting on my wish list and not my top 100. Number 23 is Mage Wars Academy, and I've played regular Mage Wars a lot, which is now called Mage Wars Arena. So when Academy came along that gets rid of the board, it's like, oh, that looks really intriguing. But I have never gotten that version of Mage Wars to the table. We've still just played the Arena so far. So Academy is on my list because it's, I believe, different enough gameplay that it stands alone aside from Arena as its own game. But Mage Wars Academy is still waiting in the wings for that reason. Number 24 is an excellent example of a chocolate and peanut butter game. You got Magic the Gathering and Heroescape smooshed together in the delicious little package of Magic the Gathering, the plain chocolate biscuit, Magic the Gathering Battle of the Planeswalkers. Dabbled with it a little bit, but really waiting on a few more expansions so it can really sink our teeth into the army construction and almost, deck building aspect of it. Until then, though, it's kind of sitting in neutral, parked, waiting for those extra expansions to hopefully materialize soon. 25 is a nifty little game with a unique theme called Luchador, about Mexican wrestling. This game is fun, neat. I just feel like I haven't given it enough attention yet to really be able to make a solid decision about it. So Luchador sits at number 25 on my list. Yes, 25. I'm remembering the numbers. It was 25! Yeah! No. Well, guess what? We're halfway through this list. So I'm going to take a little break here. I'm going to edit up this video, and I'm going to post it on the interwebs, and then I'll be back for part 2 of my top 50 games that will not appear on my top 100 games of all time list through no fault of their own. Till next time, I've been Chaz Marler, and take care, and I'll see you again real soon with part 2.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Which has a bit of a diplomacy and kind of a diplomacy. I don't know what it does. Honestly. And I got quarantined shortly before a friend of mine. I've got a telephone call. And I'm not going to go with that take.